Naruvi Hospitals, promoted by the Sanko Foundation, is the brainchild of the founder-chairman Dr. G.V. Sampath. Belonging to Vellore, the medical hub of India, Dr. Sampath's vision to create a medical destination for the people of Vellore in particular and others from India at large and also overseas resulted in the establishment of a hospital here, a real crown jewel in the field of healthcare. Large numbers of people belonging to Vellore and the surrounding districts have been known to travel to Chennai and Bengaluru, both nearly 200 kilometers away from Vellore, seeking medical care due to the dearth of facilities and the hardships faced by the locals to access available services. As per the vision of the chairman, the best in healthcare, both in terms of medical and nursing professionals as well as sophistication, were infused into the institution, making sure that patient affordability was addressed at all times. Less than a month after Naruvi Hospitals opened its doors to the public, the second wave of COVID loomed large as life. We took on the challenge and quickly rose to the occasion, catering to the local population and some from outstation as well, adding close to 40 critical care beds and over 200 ward beds to the COVID care pool. Much as it was hard for a 1-month-old hospital to handle such large volumes of very sick patients, Naruvi Hospitals was able to contribute significantly in our country's efforts to save people from the disastrous end that COVID was driving people to. Naruvi Hospitals is positioned as a high-end tertiary care center. Our focus on ethics, transparency, patient satisfaction, and an academic outlook in everything we do ensures that doctors, nurses, and others in the care team are performing at their conscientious best to not only treat patients' ailments, but also to make them happy overall when they leave our hospital. We have tied up with the Henry Ford Health System, HFHS, based out of Michigan State in the United States of America. HFHS is one of the old and leading healthcare delivery systems in Midwestern America. The main aim of this tie-up is to have constant transfer of knowledge and to get access to the time-tested practices they have been following for decades, which ultimately translated to patient care. Naruvi Hospitals is a completely paperless and filmless hospital. The Naruvi philosophy of care is embodied by our motto, Fragrance of Care. The doctors in Naruvi are largely trained in the best of medical institutes in India and come with years of rich experience in their fields of expertise. With the philosophy and its pallbearers, the medical and nursing professionals, the high-end equipment, and the building infrastructure complete the holistic picture of Fragrance of Care. The hospital is 475 bedded with a 25% critical care bed count. Naruvi Hospitals boasts of an over 5 lakh square foot building spanning 14 levels. The building is completely air conditioned, conforming to ASHRAE standards with zone-specific air conditioning to reduce cross-infection between different care areas. Our laundry is 100% barrier washed. We have a top-of-the-line sterilization department with machines with 95% water-saving machines, saving up to 300 liters of water every running hour. We have all the major medical and surgical specialties. There are 16 modular operation theaters with laminar airflow. All the equipment in the ICUs and OTs are pendant mount to avoid clutter on the floor. All the departments are equipped to the most modern standards with the best and latest equipment so as to be able to provide the best end-to-end treatment to our patients. State-of-the-art cardiac cath labs, the latest robotic hybrid OT, ECMO, interventional pulmonology, high-end orthopedics, general and bariatric surgery, epilepsy monitoring unit with robot-guided epilepsy surgery, neuro monitoring, navigation, the latest lithotripter, urology laser are just some of the arrows in our quiver. Our primary focus, though being the local Vellore people and Indians at large, we are working towards attracting overseas patients as well. We have started an office in North Sudan in Khartoum. We're in the process of tying up with the governments of Oman and Seychelles as well. In all, Naruvi Hospitals is more than a hospital. It is an experience.
Hello and very good evening to all those who have joined this session today. As we meet for a fresh edition of webinars under the Hindu Wellness Series, it is vital to remember that from September 1 to 7, India observes the National Nutrition Week. The 7 days are meant to educate people about the importance of nutrition. Hospitals, sorry, I've got a bad throat, please excuse me for that. Quite befittingly, the Naruvi hospitals they're presenting today's session on affordable, healthy diet for all, which also happens to be the theme of this year's National Nutrition Week. To discuss the important topic, we have an empowering all-women panel after a long time, drawn from the fields of public health and nutrition. And the interesting part is, while they share the common objective of educating people about nutritional needs of the body, each of them has also gained expertise on conditions and diseases India needs to worry about. For instance, diabetes is fast gaining the status of a potential epidemic in the country. And it is common knowledge that people with diabetes have a higher risk of health problems, such as chronic kidney or cardiovascular diseases. Our panelists will take forward the discussion on what could be considered good nutrition when the body, say, suffers a heart attack or has kidney failure. So now let me quickly introduce you to the panelists. A registered dietitian and certified diabetes educator, Ujjwala Bakshi, the founder of Singapore-based licensed company, Portion, Cure Through Diet, is our first speaker today. She is the Singapore Health Promotion Board Youth Ambassador, India's brand ambassador for Vahadim teas, and also a member of the Indian Dietetics Association. Ujjwala's forte is in healing people with acidity and gut health problems, managing hormonal imbalances in males and females, assessing health issues, and planning diets. Also known as a diabetes and metabolic syndrome reversal coach, Ujjwala will give her presentation on affordable nutrition and cardiovascular diseases. So very warm welcome to you, Ujjwala, and over to you now.
Thank you, Ms. Suma. It's indeed a pleasure to be on this platform, and I hope I can add value to this interesting topic that we have, which is affordable nutrition. And I'll be specifically talking about heart health. Before I move on, I'd just like to share my screen. Are you all able to see?
Yes.
Okay, so this is an important topic that every Indian should be aware of as we deal with Nutrition Week in our country. Because diet, as much as it is important, it is there are two mindsets that we get to see on a daily basis when I'm dealing with my patients, clients, wherever. One is the attitude that, yes, I can manage it by myself. It is all over the place. It's all over the internet. And there are so many quick tips out there. It's there in magazines, newspapers, everywhere. Plus, the to-go device that we have 24/7 in our hands, even while we are sleeping. I think most of the people nowadays are sleeping with the handsets in their hands. So, so the phone is such a quick access. If somebody gets a heart attack, what would be the next thing the other person will do, the relatives would do? Just go on to the internet, figure out a heart-friendly diet, right? But when they get confused that how affording it could be, so they would definitely land up into chia seeds and avocados. And I'm going to begin my say with this story. So I was in a supermarket out here in Mumbai, and luckily I got to see a couple walking ahead of me. And I think they were just there for some casual shopping. They were not really interested in any kind of very, very healthy kind of shopping. So the wife just picked up an avocado. And looking at the price, the husband was like, oh my God, so expensive, because the price of an avocado, if it is a local one grown in India, it would be somewhere about 150 plus. And if it is got from abroad, Mexico or something, then it would be anywhere 250, 300 plus. So this was an Indian version, but it costed, because of the brand also of the location, it was expensive. So the husband was very startled, and the wife just looked at his exclamation and she kept the avocado. And they nicely took away their trolley and started walking ahead in the supermarket. So I got very keen to see what's happening now next. What are they going to shop? Because if this is not appealing, what's appealing? So they landed up into a lot of stuff. Their trolley was filled with chips, right? French fries, ready to cook cutlets, deep fried ones, and colas and drinks, of course. There would be a lot of biscuits and breads also. So the trolley was filled with a lot of processed stuff. Now, if we were to live like that, if we were to evaluate our health on the basis of the cost of our food that we intake, we got to be also aware. So, of course, we know what is the monthly cost of a ration, right? How much do we, as a family, incur when it comes to food? But do we also know that this is the cost that we are incurring as an individual, right? If it comes to heart health. So in India, about 2.26 million population from 1990 has spiked up to 4.77 million individuals in 2020. And of course, the numbers have only increased post-COVID because, of course, we were not shopping outside, but we were so happy and enjoying the family time that we cooked all that fried stuff at home. And the rate at which the diabetes and heart health came up was literally tremendous. So we got to be aware that it's not just the supermarket shopping that we do. It is also the kind of foods that we cook at home that really kills the budget of not only the financial budget, but at the most, it also kills our heart health budget, right? So it is not just the price of food that you would pay for today. You have to also look into what you are buying today that is going to incur this kind of cost in the future. So when we are looking at affordable diets, we have to also look at the perspective from which we have to deal with our health. It is all right to spend a little extra on certain foods. I'm mentioning on foods right now when you are in the preventive care. So when you know that you have a history of heart disease or diabetes or any of the health issues, it is in your hands, your health is in your hands. But when it goes the other way around, when you cross that border, the red line, and you are in the red zone where you're already suffering from the disease, you don't have any choice. So if then the doctor would say that, yes, you have to eat olives, you have to cook only in olive oil, you will do so. Then at that point, the affordability is not questioned that much. So when we are in the state of preventive care, yes, we can question the affordability of our diets, but at the same time, we have to think smart, act smart to prevent the disease, okay, rather than falling into the disease. So what is it? The per patient cost, like I said, it is 2 lakhs plus, okay? It is only much more than this. It is never lesser than this. And it is definitely very less in terms of food that we were to incur on a family basis if we were to eat a little expensive food also. But still sticking on to the topic that I want to make sure that there are so many other alternatives. So it is not about that you have to eat avocado in order to control your heart health. You have to eat olives, you have to eat olive oil, not necessary, because there are so many good options in India that we can really nurture our health with. But first and foremost, we need to look at what we are doing to our health with the cheap stuff that we are buying. So the foods that I just mentioned that the couple store bought, these were high on saturated fat, trans fat, cholesterol, and salt, and low intake of fruits and vegetables have been linked to cardiovascular diseases. So if somebody doesn't enjoy eating fruits and vegetables, but they are very big on these easy to buy stuff and stock stuff, the more boxed, unprocessed, dead food that you buy, you are landing yourself up into big and major problems for the future. So this is something that we all need to take note of. Whatever you shop is going to come onto your plate. Okay, so the mindful thinking of shopping, eating everything starts right at the point that you're buying stuff. So never go hungry while you're shopping. And specifically when you're trying to shop for food, because a hungry mind is going to make very false decisions when it comes to food, right? So we want to just flip our choices. So one big thing that came up in the market was, in terms of trans fat, was it is heart-friendly butter. Okay, so there came a brand which touted the butter being heart-friendly because it was made from oil. So people started purchasing it. So that was an expensive product. So it's not always necessary that anything that is expensive is going to be healthy. We have to be smart and wise buyers, consumers. So anything that says that, okay, this is diabetes friendly, this is heart friendly product, food product, we as consumers need to turn around the boxes and read food labels, because that is something that is going to bring us to the awareness that whether the food is really healthy. So every time expensive stuff is not really healthy. If you really have to buy expensive stuff, it should be as natural as it could be rather than buying the processed stuff, right? Now, and it is not just about what you eat, it's also about how you prepare it. So when we want to start taking care of our diets, we need to start from a very basic aspect. We don't need to change the entire diet completely. If you want to take it in an affordable manner, make small baby steps, take those steps, make those changes, you want to be very sure where do you start from. So there are people, for example, they would eat all sorts of gluten-free stuff, right? Everybody knows nowadays what is gluten-free. They don't want to eat rotis. They are confused. Indians out here, we all are confused if we are not supposed to eat gluten coming from the wheat, if you're not supposed to eat rice because it is starchy. We don't like brown rice. And then eventually what are we left with? Millets, but we cannot carry millet rotis in the tiffin boxes. Then how do we manage our diets? So it is not only just about the food that you are eating day in, day out. Definitely there is a way out to balance your carbohydrates coming from the food. So if you are having any kind of heart problems, the first thing that you got to do is make sure that you work on your cooking style. So if first and foremost, you should be aware of how many times are you purchasing fried stuff, making fried stuff at home, and what's the frequency that is happening. So if it is happening every week, okay, so many patients would say that, ma'am, we don't, हमारे घर में तो कढ़ाई साल में 1 या 2 बार ही चढ़ती है. So that's a very common dialogue that comes into picture when people mean to say that we fry foods at home only once or twice a year, and that is only on Diwali and certain very specific occasions. But what happens is we are not frying food at home, but we are buying a lot of fried stuff from outside. So this is also so essential, right? We need to be aware of the totality of the foods that we are consuming. It is not just how much and how many times are you frying at home. How many times are you eating out? So you're not frying at home, but you may be ordering food from outside or going out to eat, which is fried stuff. So just change the cooking style. Just start doing steaming, boiling. So there are ways that you can make certain foods healthier by just changing the style of cooking. So for example, you can change the style of cooking or baking the cakes or any kind of pastries. You can do the steaming method. Why? Because the steaming of cake is much more healthier for the digestive system. The more our gut is healthy, the more we are able to put away these kind of diseases such as heart diseases, diabetes. So just the simple process of steaming, and it is so popular in Asian countries like Singapore. So they actually steam their cakes. They don't bake their cakes. It is as simple, right? And one such classic example that we Indians generally do in our home is dhokla. That's a steamed product. So why don't we use it for the cooking process of cakes? Likewise, we should try to reduce the saturated fats in our diet, that is ghee, butter, okay, trans fat. Trans fat, as I was mentioning, it's not only in these oil-based butters that we have, but it is also there in the McDonald's the cream that we use on top. So if we are paying, so we as consumers, we would feel, oh, I'm going to buy a expensive product, a drink in maybe Starbucks, or I'm buying a McD meal. So why should I get rid of the cream? I should call for it because I'm paying for it. But that's where you are also increasing the bill at the hospital. So it's always good to avoid that stuff. It's not going to hurt you. It's only going to help you. So be very wise and smart consumers when you are choosing to buy stuff from outside as well as preparing things at home. So instead of using creams, try using yogurt to thicken up your gravies. So that's a very basic cooking procedure, but yes, it really saves your heart a lot, right? Instead of using the heavy creams, you can also use nut butters. So like you can use cashew nut butter or a cashew paste in order to just make your gravies to thicken them up. You can also use almond paste. Of course, it is slightly expensive than the cheap creams. But like I said, the savings that you have on these kind of products today is not going to help you because it is only going to last you in the hospital. So you really need to make your choices very clear. When you know that you have a history, you have to be very careful about the food choices that you make. Mostly, very importantly, portion control. That is one of the very essential steps that we all fail to do. Generally, people go on very strict diets. They would just do 1 meal a day, 2 meals a day, intermittent fasting, XYZ kind of diets. There's so many diets out there. But the simplest thing that one can do in order to protect their heart is just portion control. And that is also cost effective. Of course, if you were to eat 3 rotis, now you're cutting down to 2 because your lifestyle does not permit so much of carbohydrates. You are actually saving on a lot of pennies. So this is something that we need to be pretty much vocal about and be aware of. Because one thing that we all need to understand is when we are trying to control portions, we are not only trying to control portions at home, we are trying to control portions of food that are outside, that we are buying from outside. So please, first and foremost, when you are trying to reduce or take care of your diet, look at it. How many times are you buying stuff which is boxed, processed, bun? Second thing is, how many times are you eating outside, or how many times are you bringing stuff from outside at home? That is the second major step in order to control the portions or the frequencies of the unhealthy stuff that I've already mentioned, like saturated fats and all. Very big important factor that we all need to take note of is when we are looking at heart health, what happens is people land up into zero oil cooking. Now, is that beneficial? Not really. For any kind of heart health issues, we still need to advise you to consume at least 3 teaspoons of oil and just 1 teaspoon of ghee in the entire day. Why? Because we need these essential fats for the absorption of fat soluble vitamins. So if you are landing up into zero fat oil, you are also landing up into increased portions of carbohydrates, because generally proteins do not go up so much and so easily because of the heaviness of the protein in nature. So what we end up doing is we naturally go high on the carbohydrates. And when the fat is so low in the diet, an unbalanced diet, the carbohydrates are eventually going to get spilled over. And one of the factors of our cholesterol profile, the lipid profile, that is triglycerides, that also increases. So we need to be very aware that it's not just that if you are consuming fats, only then your lipid profile will increase. Your lipid profile goes haywire if you are heavy on carbohydrates. And very typically of alcohol, fruits, and total carbohydrate intake, if it is high, like rice, juices, it has been reflected that the triglyceride levels also increase, which is one of the lipid profiles of the lipid tests. So it is not just about the oils and the fats in our diet, it is also about the carbohydrates. So we need to be aware of that as well. So smart shopping is about choosing to buy foods wisely. Because we have a time constraint, in a very nutshell that I'm trying to explain, that you need to choose wisely. So when you have a food budget, when you are going to the shopping center to buy stuff, first and foremost, you have to not go on an empty stomach. Please eat your meals and only then go, because a hungry mind is going to make wrong choices. Second thing is, only buy the stuff that you have made a list about. And if you really get lured about the packaging of some food item and you want to try, Very importantly, flip over, look at the ingredients. The first two ingredients are the prominent ingredients which make up the product. So even if the product says heart-friendly butter, but if the product doesn't show any kind of, if it shows palm oil or if it mentions hydrogenated fat, you have to be aware of it. It is still not heart friendly. It is only fooling you. So you have to be, so for that matter, even if you're buying the expensive fruit juice, but the first ingredient reads sugar, that means it is diluted with a lot of sugar, a lot of water, and there is little fruit in there, right? Now, just a quick insight on very prominent food items that are being touted as being very healthy for heart friendly. So yes, chia seeds, they have good amount of omega-3 fatty acids, but in Indian context, you can definitely buy an affordable ingredient, which is faluda seeds, or it is also called as sabja or takmaria. Now, this is got the same properties as chia seeds, and it also takes less time to swell up in comparison to chia seeds. So please go ahead, when you want to increase your omega-3 fatty acids, please go ahead with chia seeds. Fish oils, now fish oil capsules are expensive, right? So what is a cheaper version? What is a plant-based version? Because India is also a bit plant-based, prominently plant-based. Flax seeds oil, flax oil. If you don't find flax oil, you don't find it edible, just go on flax seeds. Okay, these flax seeds are easily available. You can just roast them, never consume them raw. Roast them, chew upon them, or add them in your yogurt or roti ka atta, and that will be fantastic to increase your omega-3 fatty acids as well. As well, flax seeds have known to increase the HDL levels and reduce the bad cholesterol. Now, protein powders. Generally, people post-op tend to lose a lot of lean body mass, and their advised protein powders, like Ms. Soma was also checking upon, how effective are protein powders? It totally depends on the condition, but I'm always of the opinion that first, let's work out the protein from the diet. And if really, really needed, then there would be an interest of some protein powder. But still, we Indians have best of the protein powders, which has been coming to us traditionally, that is sattu. What is sattu? Nothing but roasted grams powder, and it can be beautifully used in buttermilk. It can be made into form of paratha as well. So please go big on sattu if you want to increase your proteins in the diet without creating any digestive health issues, because there have been many researches and reports which have proven that protein powders, when abused, they have also caused a lot of gastric, and one of the gastric health problems is IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. So we need to be careful as consumers when we are trying to increase the protein powders, which I think really don't do that great when we are looking at increasing the protein. So I hope I have been able to, stick to the timing, and there were some insights that were helpful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ujjwala. They were really valuable inputs, and I'm sure we'll also come back to some of those points during the course of the discussion. Our next speaker, Dr. Leepika Kapoor, is currently the head of nutrition and dietetics at Naruvi Hospitals, Vellore in Tamil Nadu. She earlier worked as dietitian in Christian Medical College, Vellore. A nutritionist, researcher, and educationist with more than a decade's experience in the field of public health nutrition, Dr. Leepika did her undergraduation at Lady Irwin College, Delhi, and MSc in Foods and Nutrition from Delhi University. She has a PhD in food pigments from Vellore Institute of Technology. With a keen interest in role of nutrition in metabolic syndrome, Dr. Leepika has several scientific publications in reputed international journals to her credit. Over the next few minutes now, we will hear her speak on affordable nutrition in chronic kidney diseases. Welcome, Dr. Leepika.
Thank you, Shoma, for those wonderful words. So I'll just share my screen. Yeah, so I hope it's, is it visible? Yeah, I hope my screen is visible.
Yes.
So I'll be speaking on affordable nutrition in chronic kidney disease. And, taking up from Ujjwala, and, she was talking about the shopping carts And I'm sure, whenever we all go, our carts are full, and they're full with all kinds of packaged foods. And if you see here, today we were celebrating Onam in our hospital, and I just took a photograph of the Onam Sadhya. So how often, do we bank on the natural and the homemade food? I think mostly it's packaged, and more so for our kids, we do it even more, early in the morning, and as most of our they kind of have long hours of school and stay back. So we kind of dwell on to the preserved food items and the packaged food items, which is creating a lot of problem these days. And also Zomato and Swiggy are there to add on to the topping to this entire menace. And so the food at a finger click, might land us in a finger prick. So what I mean by this is that, there is a upscale in the incidence of diabetes and obesity and metabolic diseases. And Zomato, Swiggy, and all our online, instant food apps have a lot of big role to play in this. So moving over to our expense of casual grazing, and we all are doing it on a regular basis, very, very casually. We just take down a cup of soda down our throat without even realizing it having a 26 packs of sugar. And we need to really work out hard to break down the sugar that we have taken in. So are we doing it? I don't think so. We just take that soda down our throat, enjoy the movie, come back home, again relax, isn't it? I don't think so many of us are going for swimming or walking or tennis, after having around a large serving of French fries. So I think there needs to be mindful and thoughtful grazing rather than, mindless grazing. So this screen kind of clearly shows how the screens were in 1990 and how they are now. So the screens are getting flatter, but our bellies are getting fatter. So I think we need to really kind of think on those lines. And so there are a lot of linked mechanisms, with all this. So the epidemiology of chronic kidneys of CKD is on a rise. And this is one of the articles which was recently published. And it says that more than 10% of the general population worldwide is getting affected, with more than 800 million individuals worldwide. And the slide here clearly shows that 1 among the 10 these days is suffering from CKD. And it is sooner or later going to be, fifth in rank in terms of being the cause of death. So I think we need to really kind of spread awareness regarding CKD, as it's shooting up the ladder in terms of being having very, very adverse consequences. So moreover, the etiology, if I go back to the previous slide, it's more prevalent in individuals with diabetes mellitus, people with hypertension. However, these days, we also have people with CKD with uncertain etiology, and which is very much worrisome. So India is kind of a red hot spot in terms of, unknown cause of having CKD. I mean, the patients are not diagnosed with a history of diabetes or hypertension, but still having high creat, high uric acid, and the other biochemical parameters which are linked with the disease. So which is really, really alarming. And so which brings us to, this topic of discussion of having an affordable MNT, which is a kidney-friendly nutrition, which is the need of the hour. So why so? Because kidneys are the most important organs of our body, which help in the excretion and purification of the waste in our blood. So if they don't function well, then our blood is going to be full with all kinds of toxic substances. Therefore, it's extremely important that nutrition knowledge pertaining to healthy kidneys reach to the masses in general. And this was the whole sole aim of doing this webinar in collaboration with Hindu, so that we reach out to the masses and we kind of make this information, kind of affordable to the masses who are not reaching us out, to the hospitals. And I think this is one platform where we can target a large audience. So that was the main aim of doing this seminar. So now today what I'm going to do is I'm going to design the renal plate, And in the renal plate, I'm going to work out on all the 9 food groups, which we are all aware of: milk, meat, pulse, cereal, veg A, veg B, fruit, fats, and sugars. So I'm going to define, which items are renal friendly so that we kind of stick to them and follow. And more importantly, for patients who are suffering from renal disease, and also for the others who would like to keep them away from this gross disease. So moving over to the next slide. So in the renal diet, one of the most important electrolytes that we look into is dietary potassium. And why dietary potassium? Because potassium affects our muscle function. And mind you, our hearts are also made of the smooth muscles, and we do want them to be intact, don't we? So we better take care of the potassium in our diets. So let's look at some of the renal friendly cereals which are low in potassium. And I'm going to fill up this renal plate with a variety of cereals. So let's see what comes. So we first have the rice flakes, followed by the vermicelli, followed by semolina, which we call suji in Hindi, or rava. Then we have the wheat, and we have the rice, and we have the oats, and we have the millets. So these are some of the common cereals which we all, kind of consume day in and day out. And among these, oats and millets are the cereals which we kind of restrict for CKD patients because they're very high in potassium. And also wheat up to 50 grams in a day, because wheat is also a good source of potassium. But the dilemma is that most of the patients who are suffering from CKD are also diabetic, 99% of them. So how do you manage their sugars? If, we kind of give them rice flakes or, rice, then the sugars rise up. So in that context, wheat up to 50 grams can be consumed by CKD patients who have diabetes. But apart from that, oats and millets have to be strictly out of the renal plate. So these are the cereals which are renal friendly and which should be taken up by patients suffering from CKD. So now we come on to the fruits. Fruits, as we all know, are a very, very rich source of potassium. And so let's fill our plate with all the fruits. And I'm sure we are well aware with all their names. So yeah, so our plate is full. So now among these fruits, the renal patients have to avoid the citrus fruits, such as, I had just omitted the sweet lime, the high potassium fruits like banana, the dried fruits, the grapes, the apricots, the cherry, the dates, the sapota, mango, kiwi, and the muskmelon. So these are the fruits which are renal friendly. And so a simple way to remember is APPP, which is A for apple, P for pear, pineapple, papaya. And you can also have a handful of jamu and strawberry, right? So next we move on to the renal friendly vegetables. And vegetables are also a good source of potassium. So I'm just going to fill my plate with all the vegetables. And we have radish, tomato, cucumber, coconut, all the gourd varieties, the bottle gourd, the bitter gourd, the ridge gourd, and the snake gourd. So for the renal patients, all the gourd varieties are a yes. However, vegetables like tomato, coconut, pumpkin, the beans, the greens, the peas, and the lime are not allowed because they're very high in potassium. So we need to take them in very, very sparing amounts. Green leafy vegetables, you can have maybe around 20 to 50 grams in the whole day. Sparingly, we can use them. But there's another magic that we have in our hands with respect to potassium in vegetables. We can leach out the potassium in vegetables and reduce the potassium in vegetables so that, we can add on more vegetables to this plate. So leaching of vegetables is extremely important in case of CKD. So what we have to do is just, like we can see in this slide, fill our pan with water, boil it, drain it again, and again refill it with water, boil it up, again drain off the water, and then do it 3 times. So what happens is that the potassium from the vegetables leaches out by this process. So moving over to which macronutrient is very, very important to be taken care of in a renal diet, and I would say proteins, because as I already mentioned that, kidneys have a very vital role to play in terms of clearance of waste in our blood. So proteins kind of, once they are broken down in our body, they are broken down as creatinine, urea, and uric acid. And if our kidneys are not working well, they're going to stay in our blood. So the protein content has to be in moderation. And again, my renal plate is right there. And we're going to see the plant proteins, as we all know, is the legumes and pulses, all kinds of split and whole pulses, green moong, chana, Bengal gram, kidney beans. And the other vegetarian protein is nuts, isn't it? So sadly, both of them are very high in potassium, which again, we can't play with, as it can have very detrimental effects with our heart, which we all want to, kind of to be intact, because we all want to live, isn't it? So we need to kind of keep our potassium in control. So what we can do is, we can, rather than having a thicker portion of pulses of, in terms of consistency, we can have thin dals, and maybe once a day or twice a day. So that would help to keep the potassium in control. But nuts cannot be permitted because they are very high in protein and also a very rich source of potassium. So I'm keeping it out of a renal plate for a patient who's suffering from CKD. So next, coming over to why should phosphorus intake be monitored in a renal diet? Now, what happens is that high phosphorus content in the diet can kind of increase the phosphorus levels in the blood in case of CKD patients. I'm not talking about, normal cases. In a CKD scenario, the phosphorus levels are generally high, as what we see in a few cases, and phosphorus can bind with calcium and it can result in calcification of vessels. Again, our hearts are at stake, so we do want them to work. So phosphorus intake also needs to be kind of curtailed in case of patients who are suffering from chronic kidney disease. So let's have a plate, and we're going to fill it up with the animal protein. So milk, which we get from the cow, the eggs, the chicken, the fish, the egg yolks, the mutton, the seafood, the organ meats, the cheese, the paneer, and so on and so forth. So this is our protein all in all in terms of the animal protein. So as I already mentioned that I'm going to omit out the protein, which is kind of high in phosphorus. So in that regard, the fish goes out, the organ meats go out, the mutton goes out, the seafood goes out, and the egg yolk goes out. And the cheese also has to go out because it's high in sodium along with phosphorus. Yes, it does taste a little salty, the cheese slice, when we all taste it. It also has a bit of sodium in it. So now if I mention the ml in milk, because we have to kind of limit, because dairy is also a good source of phosphorus. So, it's a very difficult battle that we have to win in case of renal patients, where you have to also kind of provide them good calcium, because most of them have calcium deficiency. So an intake of around 300 ml of milk is what is recommended in patients up to CKD stage 3. They can have it. And beyond that, of course, if they are on dialysis, then the parameters are very different. But a safe limit would be milk up to 300 ml. And they can have around 1 to 2 egg whites in a day. Chicken, I know, I've put it up, but you can have it only maybe once a month. And paneer, of course. But if you're having 300 ml of milk in a day, then you should not have paneer on the same day. You can make the paneer out of that 300 ml and consume it. So they should not be on the same day. Again, paneer should not be curdled with lime and made, because lime, as I already mentioned, is high in potassium. It should be made with beaten curds. So moving over to the next, why should the sodium intake be monitored? As again, sodium may result in buildup of fluids in the tissues and the blood. So we see the patients who are suffering from CKD, the chronic kidney disease, they have a lot of edema. sometimes, which is due to high levels of sodium, because the blood is, again, I would like to kind of emphasize on it that, the blood is not being purified because the kidneys are not functioning properly, and all the levels of, say potassium or sodium or your creatinine or uric acid, all these toxic levels, which are on in a normal individual, will be in a balance. That entire balance is kind of disrupted in case of CKD, and all levels are high. So we need to keep our sodium in check. So how do we do that? So sodium intake, again, I have my plate. And this time, I'm sorry to say, I'll have to remove all of these. Why? Because all the bakery items, the bread, the pizza, the buns, all of them, they are very high in sodium. Even our cakes, it may taste sweet, but they do put in a lot of salt, your bicarbonate. That's a very rich source of sodium. So all the bakery products need to be out. Next, coming the popcorn. Of course, if it is unsalted, it's good. But if it is salted, it has to go out. Next, coming to our papads and pickles and chutneys, all preserved foods like tomato ketchup and things like that, they have to be out. Your table salt, sorry, I have omitted now the canned products. All the preserved foods are again a very high source of sodium. And all your carbonated beverages have a lot of sodium, so that goes out. And the chips, the salted chips, and the table salt and the namkeen. I'm sorry, in case of sodium, in case of CKD, the plate has to be empty. In fact, all the patients, mostly they are on a salt-free diet with a restriction of around 4 grams salt, and which is, kind of finely measured and ordered and handed over. So sodium is a very, very important mineral which one needs to look into in case of CKD. So moving over to the fats and oils which are permissible in a renal diet. And so we have the rice bran oil, we have the coconut oil. And if you remember, I've already spoken about coconut being very high in potassium. So definitely it's going to be out sooner or later. Ghee, then we have the peanut oil, and the nuts already I mentioned are a rich source of potassium again. The salted butter, the palm oil, and the unsalted butter. So I'm sure by now you all would agree with me that the coconut oil, the peanut oil, and the salted butter and the palm oil has to be out of the plate. And we can play with these 3 fats, but that too in moderation. That doesn't mean that I'm advocating that, okay, we can have 3 spoons of ghee. All these 3 also have to be in kind of moderation. So moving over to the crucial monitoring of fluid. Fluid monitoring is also extremely important in CKD because the urine output is kind of reduced in case of kidney patients. So what are the sources of fluid in our diet? We have water, we have milk, we have other beverages, we have buttermilk, we have the juices, we have tea, coffee, we have the soups. So all this, we have the curries and the gravies, all this will count in the fluid. It's not just the water, which the general notion is that, okay, I have a fluid restriction, so, I need to just restrict water. But your entire fluids in the entire diet needs to be kind of strictly restricted. General formula is, your urine output plus 500 ml, and your dietitian and the physician will also guide you regarding the fluid restriction, especially in case of CKD patients. So we are again back to from where we started. So if I have to summarize, I would say the renal diet has to be low in protein, low in purine, low in potassium, low in phosphorus, fluid restricted, and salt restricted. Well, I may sound very strict, but I'm sure that the last slide, which is an all allowed renal plate, should make the renal patients happy, as we do have a variety of cereals, vegetables, fruits to play with, provided we kind of play with them throughout the day in a balanced manner. We can use a lot of condiments to kind of spice our food. So what if there's no sodium? There are several other condiments, isn't it? Like bay leaf, cinnamon, cardamom. At Naruvi, our whole soul aim is that, the renal diet, which is supposed to be the very, very strict diet, should be really made palatable, because I think it's a real challenge to make a diet kind of palatable without salt. So we can definitely play with, and we do it here with kind of, with the different condiments and other flavor enhancers, we can kind of make this diet very much palatable. So it looks pretty strict, but yes, we need to follow the strict guidelines so that our kidneys are safe and we don't land up into further deterioration of the kidney function. So I'll kind of wind up with this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Deepika, for that very colorful and creative presentation and easy to fathom. Joining us from Kenya is our final panelist, Beatrice Okere, clinical dietitian at the Kilimani Diabetes and Endocrine Center. With a master's in public health from Mount Kenya University, Beatrice has 15 years of experience of working in public health nutrition and policy development, engagement, and cardiorenal diseases. Passionate about advancing positive health outcomes, Beatrice focuses on awareness creation, disease prevention, and management strategies. Her work as a nutritionist and medical educator while dealing with patients, their families, health workers, will give an insight on how to strengthen nutrition public awareness campaigns. Beatrice's presentation is going to be on affordable medical nutrition therapy in diabetes. A warm welcome to you, Beatrice, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'll be trying to give a Kenyan perspective of how we can ensure that medical nutrition therapy is actually affordable in management of diabetes. So just to start us off is to let you know that I do not have any disclaimers. I am doing this voluntarily. So what is a medical nutrition therapy? If we understand what medical nutrition therapy is, then we will be able to move through this. Diabetes is a chronic condition. When we are diagnosed with diabetes, and at the back of our minds, we actually get an explanation to know that this is a disease that is going to stay with us for a long time. That helps us to be able to think about how to manage it, so that we can be able to plan the finances around it. We did not plan for the disease to come, but yes, we have been diagnosed with something that is going to stay with us for a long time. How can we balance the resources around it to be able to both take care of the food, to be able to take care of the medication, and any other health requirement or services that we may need from the hospital. So what then is the difference between the type 1 diabetes and the type 2 diabetes? We will find type 1 diabetes more in children and young adults, and more type 2 diabetes in older adults. The trend is, however, now changing very, very fast, and we also have a lot of young people actually ending up with type 2 diabetes. But the greatest thing to always note is that whereas type 1 diabetes is as a result of an autoimmune dysfunction, and we may not have anything that we may do before we are diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, when it comes to type 2 diabetes, it is a correlation or a mixture of both genetics, the fact that it is there in the family history, as well as lifestyle. And the previous speakers have really put it clear that our lifestyle, especially the foods that we eat, can put us at a great risk of developing a disease like diabetes, which, if not managed, eventually now causes the problem to the heart and even the renal function. What is the rallying call around trying to understand this diabetes is the fact that it has no cure. Yes, we are now talking about issues of remission, but we really do not have a cure for diabetes. So what are the goals of medical nutrition therapy? Everybody can talk about food, from just somebody who has done a certificate course in nutrition, can talk about food and tell you what to eat or what not to eat. But when we are talking about medical nutrition therapy, we are considering a personalized plan that helps the patient to be able to deal with their diabetes. It is, are you talking to a child who has type 1 diabetes? Are they a teenager? Is it an older adult, young adult who has type 1 diabetes or even has type 2 diabetes? Or are you talking to a parent of a child who has diabetes? Or are you talking even to just an ordinary middle-aged person who has diabetes? What are the things that they are going through? What will you understand about their schedules? Can that fit into the plan of how we would like to suggest that they eat to be able to manage their diabetes? While doing medical nutrition therapy, it is important that we consider to provide these clients or these patients with practical tools for meal planning. We may, like the previous speakers have said, we may be looking at a very good source of food that will be low in carbohydrates. But is it available? Is it affordable to them? Do they eat it? Because we are using medical nutrition therapy to be able to improve blood glucose levels, improve the blood pressure, the lipids, the weight of the patient, and hopefully be able to even prevent complications if they have not started, or if the complications have already set in, like in the case of most type 2 diabetics who come with complications, even at diagnosis, then how can we slow them down so that we don't have detrimental effects of the same? And in this medical nutrition therapy, are we able to address individual needs for the kind of profile of the patients that I had presented before? What we may give to a type 1 diabetic who is a teenager may not be the same advice that is given to a younger child who probably is in preschool, and not the same one that we will give to an older citizen who has diabetes, maybe somebody who is 70 years and above. Because at the end of the day, the goal of medical nutrition therapy is that we should be able to improve the overall health and well-being of these patients. If we are not able to maintain the pleasure of eating, and now maybe everything is boiled, everything does not have taste because we have done a lot of restrictions, and we are not able to practically help these patients understand what else they can do to make their food more palatable, we might interfere with their pleasure of eating, which may reduce actually the amount of food that they can eat comfortably to provide for good health. So what benefits are we looking at when we are talking about medical nutrition therapy? It is good to note that while we have talked about the goals of medical nutrition therapy, sorry, there's a bit of a lag on my end. We want to reduce the HbA1c levels of these patients. Just a minute. We want to control the blood, improve the blood sugar control for these patients. And how are we doing that? We are doing that by monitoring the amount of carbohydrate that these patients are eating. We are monitoring the frequency with which they eat some of the foods that may actually have high carbohydrates, because at the end of the day, you want to provide a large variety for this patient. So if certain fruits have got high glycemic index, for example, we have the watermelons and the pineapples providing high glycemic index, are the patients able to eat this in such small quantities so that the load that they will have of the same fruit does not really spike their sugars? Or do they want to actually eat their main meal and then save the fruit to be eaten much later when the sugars have just started coming down? And that way they're able to have a much more smoother curve in their management than spikes of the sugar. We also have studies that indicate that proper medical nutrition therapy effectively given to the patients has the ability to therefore control or reduce the amount of blood A1C levels, which is the average 3 months blood glucose control measure. And as we had said previously, prevented and or they be reduced if then we have the patients carefully following a given plan for their medical nutrition therapy to manage diabetes. Significantly reduce in patients with type 2 diabetes. Is it always easy as it is said? Not quite. Sometimes we encounter challenges. So it is not as clear as we may encounter. While sorry about that. I think I had a lag.
There is a voice, like we can't hear you, Beatrice.
Kindly confirm if I'm back on. Am I back on?
We can see your slides, but I think there's an audio problem. Can you
Better
hear
now? I can hear better now.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry for that hitch. So I'll go back to the slide that I was in. So what are some of the challenges that we see while doing this? It can be so difficult to make the necessary changes, both for the dietitian who's trying to help this patient and even for the patient who is seated right across you. Because then if you have $20, then the question would be, do I want to go for, like Ujwala had mentioned earlier, do I want to go for the fast processed packed foods? Or can I actually have the time to go into the organic side of things and buy real food for the same amount of money? There is also a problem with lack of proper infrastructure and support. Do we always have family support? Do we have support at work for these clients? Because if that support is not there, then it makes it complicated. It makes the patient with diabetes have more time out of work because they're not able to control their condition. So if we do not have proper support, we do not have patient support groups, it can be very difficult. And just to show you that occasionally around in Kenya, we have patient support group meetings, and that helps to just make management of the condition better, because then you're able to learn from each other what it is that you do to try and better manage the nutrition aspect of the food. What are the other challenges? Managing of diabetes can be an expensive affair. From the medications, from the food, if I have these food restrictions, are they locally available where I am? Are they foods that I eat? Are they foods that are acceptable by the entire family? Or then do I have to cook for everybody separately in a large family? And especially if you're paying it out of pocket, it can become very expensive. That is why having a shopping list beforehand, coordinating with your dietitian to be able to know what is affordable to you, what is available to you, can also help. And how many times actually are you supposed to go in for these sessions to have a chat about your nutrition therapy? Sometimes we are lucky that the medical aid or the medical insurance is able to pay for it. Other times they choose what to pay for. Probably they'll tell you it is a private medical insurer, and they'll tell you we are only able to pay for 3 sessions in a year. Good enough, but are there other means that this can be sorted out? For the civil servants in Kenya, that is National Hospital Insurance Fund, the government medical fund. Sometimes they get to pay for it. They get to pay for the medical nutrition therapy sessions. I think about up to 4 of them, but it is not for all the citizens, because yes, the citizens pay, but we have grades. So the ones in the civil service may be able to get more sessions, and the ones in public sector may have to pay out of pocket. The other challenge that we get with medical nutrition therapy is it is time consuming. You actually have to plan for you to purchase some of these foods. So then you ask, do I get the convenience of going to the grocery store, what we call the supermarkets, and get the same food expensively? Or do I want to spare time because it is a planned activity, so that at the end of the week, then I can visit the market, I can get my supplies and have my meals prepared and save a few coins. So when we are doing medical nutrition therapy, is it what the patient prefers, what they would rather have, or is it what must be there? We are talking to an individual who may be having diabetes, may be having renal disease, may be having a heart condition, and this person has to be treated as a whole person. So yes, consider what the patient may prefer, but the patient has the right to be educated on what is healthy, what is important, what is needed, and the other varieties that they can actually have. So that what they would rather have, if eventually it makes them have a higher medical bill, then we have not made management of the disease affordable. We have not made the nutrition aspect affordable. Do I have local examples of how to make medical nutrition therapy affordable? Yes. Remember, we said it is an individualized process. But if a dietitian has to sit with one patient and tailor make their meal plan, it can become a bit expensive in terms of time and even the money. So by ensuring that our patients participate in diabetes-related social activities, like the walks, it might be able to encourage the starting of exercise or physical activity by our patients. When that is happening, they're able to replicate it, because that's then you get a lot of them in one, a lot of the patients in one place, and you're able to teach a few concepts of how to manage their diets. We also have what we call WhatsApp groups by patients and parents, and just support groups that are basically online. And this really took center stage during COVID, because then we realized nobody has to travel, so they save up on the travel money. And in these groups, what do we do? Then we have discussions about food. People ask questions, we are able to advise and try to keep it as general so that so many people can benefit from it. And in those groups, you're also able to pick out who has a problem and align them to where we have maybe a support group, and they are able to get much better help with the professionals that are around. What about in terms of food? So then this slide is actually from a cooked food from home. If the patient does not necessarily do plant proteins, for example, or they are vegan, they're vegetarians, what other options exist? How can they ensure that they still have a high, they achieve satiety, but they have low carbohydrate intake? So that's an example of an egg curry with a bit of corn and a bit of rice. Of course, it is individualized, so do not look at the plate and imagine that it's too little and you might not get too full. Or sometimes you're looking at animal proteins. What varieties do we have in Kenya? Then we have what we call sardines, which are locally available. They can be stored for a much longer time. And that's a corn dumpling on the side, what we call ugali. And anybody in any particular setting can actually be able to adopt that and still be able to have a healthy meal that can help them to control their blood sugar. Any other local examples? Yes, in the public hospitals and in dispensaries, then we can have group education where you can be able to reach a higher number of people with minimal resources. So it's one dietitian being able to teach more than 20 people at one go, and these groups can be done every time when we have such sessions. How about monitoring? We know the gold standard is to monitor 6 to 7 times in a day, especially if the patient is on insulin or the patient is on an insulin pump or multiple daily injections. But sometimes this is not possible. So if they're able to get a machine, a glucometer that is affordable, the strips are locally available, and they're able to stagger their testing. So that's an example of a patient food diary together with blood glucose monitoring schedule. If they're able to do that, then it makes the cost of this management, and especially to check which foods are better at controlling blood sugar than the rest, it makes it even much better. And of course, investing in training, so that we have in-service training for our local healthcare providers, that even in the absence of a dietitian, there can be some principled information or some basic information that the patients can have as they wait for a dietitian's review. So in summary, what am I saying? Medical nutrition therapy cannot be thrown out of management of diabetes and any other condition, especially the chronic illnesses. It is such an essential part. And where possible, we recommend that we actually have a dietitian or a nutritionist that actually has interest and training in diabetes be able to do that. We have several affordable means of ensuring that we get medical nutrition therapy to our patients, and we just need to explore the budgets that are available. What job does this patient do? What food is available to them? What is their food frequency schedule? And what is the diversity that is available to them? And how can we use what we have to ensure that we are able to sustain this diet and we are able to provide individualized care for our patients? Lastly, working as a team, working in a multidisciplinary approach definitely works very well, so that we are able to coordinate from the physician, the psychiatrist or the psychologist, the counselor, the food person, just to ensure that every professional who is taking care of this client knows what is going on and that they are able to take care of the patient in an affordable manner. Thank you. Back to you, Soma.
Yeah, thank you, Beatrice. It was a very information-packed and a racy presentation, but unfortunately, all the three presentations were pretty long and we have run out of time for the program. So what I'll do is I'll quickly jump to the questions and take a few so that, our participants will have. So there's the first question by Prithuman P, who's asking that does taking meat weekly twice pose threats for people who are above 50 and also have diabetes? And is there any alternative for this? So Dr. Lipika, would you like to take that?
Yeah, surely. Of course, meats, as I already mentioned, I think we should go in for lean meats, maybe chicken without skin or egg whites. And we do have, in comparison, equally at par the vegetarian protein in terms of soya bean and, the tofu and our cottage cheese and so on and so forth. So we do cottage cheese from the soya milk is what I mean. So the plant protein is also at par. So why do we have to go with the red meats and the organ meats? I think we should go on with the leaner options of meat. Thank you.
Ujjala, maybe you could take this. Roshan Karya wants to know that flax seeds are known to contain a very high amount of cadmium, which can cause toxicity. So should that be of concern?
Not really, actually, because we don't end up eating too much of flaxseed. If we are able to consume, we're just doing about 2 teaspoons or 3 teaspoons a day. If that's really concerning someone, then they can soak the flax seeds and discard the water, okay, to remove the toxicity, and then can utilize it. Thank you.
Sorry, there's a specific question about, is radish good for prostate condition of kidneys? Is radish good for prostate condition?
Radish is fine with respect to its potassium content. And I have not come across any research with, in relation to prostate. Beatrice, anything from your end?
Not really. And actually, the advice to the person would be, no single food will actually cure a disease. So then they shouldn't look at radish as the cure for prostate. But no, I haven't seen anything on my side.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Likewise, is drinking too much coffee good or bad for heart?
So coffee is a known diuretic. So people look at it from both the angles that those who are coffee lovers, they would say, oh, coffee has antioxidants and it really helps. But at the same time, coffee is also a diuretic. So if somebody is really fond of consuming coffee, definitely there's still a limit to it, about 2 cups, okay, a day. And preferably decaffeinated coffee is the one that would be the best for somebody who is in love of coffee. And whether it is good for the heart, yes, when considered in moderation, it is good. overdoing it, it is only going to cause a lot of extraction of urine as well as fluids from the body, leading to dehydration and eventually not so good for the heart health as well.
Sundara Raju has raised a concern about the adolescent population of the country, which is almost 21%. And also she's saying that in the rural and semi-urban areas, whenever we are having a discussion, it's very, very city-centric most of the time. So she's raising her concern for the population in rural and semi-urban segment, who she says also live on high salt, high sugar, getting used to this fat, junk foods, which is now available to them also. So what is it that you would, as a piece of advice or tip you would like to give, other than government initiatives and schemes which are available, what could kind of constitute a mass movement on healthy eating? Who would like to take that? Maybe
I would like to take this because there is a lot of kids nutrition that I have done, and because I've worked with institutes in Singapore on kids nutrition, the way they've handled it is creating awareness at school level. Okay, and even in rural population, there are balwadis, and they have small scale schools wherein food is one of the primary reason why the attendance in school is high. So if therein this education can go up with respect to packaged foods and not promoting it, the problem is, like, even as much as we want to educate, like as nutritionists, we go to the schools, we educate the children, the students and the teachers. At the same time, the bell rings and the canteen is still offering the sandwiches, and it is still offering those packaged juices, which is very disappointing. It is like sare kiye karai pe pani ferna. It's all that. It's like that. So I think that is one thing that has to be a heart of the the entire foundation. Laying nutritionist foundation is only going to be starting from childhood rather than unlearning. So what is happening is, we are, as parents or as adults, we are looking into convenience foods, offering them to our kids, maybe out of their insistence. But eventually, it is when we grow up, when the children will grow up into adults, they have to unlearn, come to us as nutritionists, as dietitians, pay to us, and then land up in the entire. So it's a vicious cycle. Why don't we stop it at the grassroots level, at the foundation level? We have to educate the schools and the parents. I think that is very important.
Beatrice, how to reduce belly fat in diabetes? And how do people...
How to reduce?
High levels of stress. How to reduce the belly fat? Belly.
I love when people want spot reduction. And the truth is, if we don't put in the energy, if we don't put in the hours, if we do not eat correctly, then we are going to have trouble trying to lose that belly fat. Because the most of the people imagine that if I eat junk, then I'll have belly fat. But sometimes you may actually not be eating junk, but your portion sizes are so high. You're eating normal food, but you're overdoing a certain type of food. And especially in this case, it is much more easier to overdo your carbohydrates, have a higher intake of the carbohydrates. And then eventually you're not exercising, so you have a sedentary lifestyle. So unless we go back to where the brain started beating us, how are we using our carbohydrates? Do we eat sufficient for the work that we are doing? Are we able to be physically active? So that if we have proper weight loss, you have the proper BMI, you have the proper waist circumference, it is not just about the belly fat. Because by the time you're seeing the belly fat, what else is happening around your organs? Are you considering the visceral fats? Are you considering the cholesterol? So no spot reduction, everything has to be done in a meaningful manner.
Okay, one final question, which is on plant-based protein. Somebody wants to know, is it okay to combine cereals and pulses in the same meal or in the same day to get all the amino acids and to make the meal a complete meal?
So can I take this?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So I think the question has the answer itself. So cereal and pulse is a fantastic combination. So cereals lack certain amino acids like lysine, and pulses are rich in it. So pulses lack methionine and cereals are rich in it. So it is very good indeed if you have them together. And our indigenous foods, even without the scientific background, Our ancestors were so great. Like you can take your idli sambar or your dal rice khichdi or your any kind of a cuisine. It is totally around these lines of a cereal pulse combination, which is by default, I must say, because I think in those times, nobody had this concept of lysine and methionine, but still we had perfect, fantastic cereal pulse combinations. And it is indeed extremely good to have it.
Yeah, and just one final takeaway, because Beatrice mentioned about these individualized or customized diet plans for patients with the various ailments. So I just wanted to ask both Ujjwala and Dr. Lipika, in Indian hospitals, do we have that setup which helps the patient? Like, first, because a lot of us are confused, what is the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist? And whether all our government hospitals and our private hospitals, do they have these kind of customized plans, or it is just one formula for all patients in the ward?
Deepika, you want to go ahead first?
Yeah. So it is definitely not one formula for one patient. It doesn't work at all. So it is totally individualized based on their height and weight, their BMIs, their calorie requirements, their protein requirements, their fat requirements. Of course, we do have a cyclic menu, but then that is tailor-made for each patient. We kind of define how much amount of cereal has to go, how much amount of protein has to go for this case. It's kind of per ml calculated, I would say, especially in case of critical cases. So I'm sure hospitals like Naruvi and even Ujjwala, she's the founder of Portion, we do kind of focus, on the ethnicity and the scientific content, which is extremely important in case of diet, which I feel is kind of kind of on certain occasions taken very casually. It's like, okay, how does it matter if it's one chapati or two or three? Well, it does matter. And it does matter in a big way, because an extra chapati to a diabetic will raise his sugars like anything, and idli in the breakfast will have an equal impact. But if you have a bowl of sprouts in the morning, I mean, we know all those logistics, but I think in the layman language, I would still say in India, the subject of dietetics has a long, long way to go. And I think people need to be sensitized that it is, a science in a big way, and it is not just, हाँ ठीक है, it's kind of chalta hai. It doesn't matter whether rice is 1 cup or 1.5 cup, because each grain is kind of quantified in our calculations. And more importantly, in case of ICUs, people on these formulas and these diets, and we kind of, so it is quite scientific, and, it has that bent, but it's not taken up that way, I believe. In the Indian scenario, it's taken very casually. It's taken as it's like, okay, it doesn't really matter. But I think it plays a very, very vital role along with the medicines the patient is having. And it plays a very, very critical role. Ujjwala.
So I'm always for customized diets, because it's as simple as knowing somebody's food likes, dislikes. So a customized diet is very different from a generic diet. A generic diet would be just, fill in the blanks, 2 chapatis and 1 katuri dal and all that. So that also happens. And that happens in private clinics as well, wherein the doctor has somebody to just do that, fill in the blanks kind of a thing. But what really makes a difference in somebody's life, if they're honestly wanting to change their dietary habits, their health, that transformation, customization is the key. Because, for example, because India has such a great difference and in ethnicity, a South Indian will not be able to eat rotis both the times. He will need his idlis, and he will need some small portion of rice. And that's where the struggle is always. The patient from the hospital, they would come to the private clinic. The reason, because they were not satisfied, they were not answered. They were just given a fill in the blank kind of a paper. It could be sometimes also in private clinics, there are doctors who have dietitians, but they don't have the time. The patient load is so much that they have a printed sheet, and it would be just as simple as, okay, just tick it up. But at the same time, the patient is like, within 5 minutes, I was given the diet. I have been following it. My sugars, nothing has got controlled, and I don't even know. And to my surprise, there are patients, the epilepsy patients, there are kidney patients who know about the leaching process and everything. But the epilepsy patients, they know that they have to be on a high protein diet, but they are not guided enough. So very important to work on anybody's food habits is first and foremost to understand their food likes and dislikes. We can't force somebody to eat a bitter gourd or karela if they don't like it in the name of wanting to manage their diabetes. So we have the diet has to be user friendly, be in context with any health condition, as simple as weight management also. So it is that essential.
Right. So we still have a few questions left unanswered, and if you wish, you could take them up later. I'm very sorry that we have run out of time and I have to draw the curtains. So I would really thank all of you and all our participants who joined this webinar on affordable healthy diet for all during the week when we are celebrating our National Nutrition Week. And this webinar was brought to you by the Naruvi hospitals under the Hindu Wellness Series. Thank you all once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.